Hello and welcome to my presentation on SSH. This is Grant Williams again, and this is for ISA 4220. So today we'll be going over an introduction and what is SSH, how it works. We'll be talking about OpenSSH, some common security risks, hardening tools, three of them, and a conclusion along with my references. So to start, SSH or Secure Shell is one of the most important tools for remote system administration. It encrypts the communication between a client and a server, protecting credentials and commands from being intercepted. System administrators use SSH every day to log into servers, manage configurations, and transfer files securely using SCP or SFTP. It can also be used to create encrypted tunnels for other types of network traffic, and however, because SSH often provides direct access to critical systems, it's also a major attack target if it's not properly configured or hardened. Weak passwords, outdated keys, and open ports can quickly turn SSH into a risk rather than a safeguard. What is SSH? SSH, like said before, it stands for Secure Shell. It's a network protocol that provides a safe, encrypted way to access and manage devices over an unsecured network. Before SSH, people used tools such as Telnet or RSH, which sent login credentials and commands in plain text, which was a huge security risk. SSH replaced those tools by encrypting traffic between the client and the server, keeping sensitive data protected and from eavesdropping or tampering. By default, SSH runs on TCP port 22. Though administrators sometimes change that for security reasons. Overall, SSH has become the safeguard for secure remote administration across Linux, Mac OS, and even Windows systems. How SSH works. SSH operates on a client-server model, meaning one device, the client, initiates a secure connection to another device, the server. The first step is the key exchange, where both sides agree on encryption methods using asymmetric cryptography, essentially a public and private key pair that ensures only the correct parties can read the data. Next, authentication happens. This can be through a password, but more securely through key-based authentication, where the client's private keys must match the server's public key. Once connected, SSH encrypts all the communication between the two, ensuring both confidentiality, that no one else can read it, and integrity, meaning that the data cannot be altered in transit. Altogether, these steps make SSH a reliable, secure method for managing systems remotely without exposing sensitive information. OpenSSH. OpenSSH is the most widely used implementation of the Secure Shell protocol. It comes pre-installed on nearly every Linux distribution and is also available for Mac OS and Windows. It's not just one program. OpenSSH provides several essential tools. The SSH command allows remote login, SCP and SFTP handle secure file transfers, and SSHD is the server-side service that accepts incoming SSH connections. The project is maintained by the OpenBSD team, which is known for its strong focus on security and code quality. Now, because of that, OpenSSH has become the standard choice for secure remote access and management in both enterprises and cloud environments. Now, in short, when people talk about using SSH, they're almost always referring to OpenSSH behind the scenes. Some common security risks. Even though SSH is secure by design, it can still become a major vulnerability if it's not properly configured and maintained. The most common threat is brute force attacks. Automated scripts constantly try to guess usernames and passwords on port 22, especially on servers exposed to the internet. Weak or reused passwords make this even easier, and attackers often succeed just by trying lists of common credentials or passwords leaked from other breaches. Misconfigurations are another big issue. For example, leaving root login enabled gives attackers direct access to the most powerful account, and allowing password-based login instead of key-based authentication increases risk. Finally, running an outdated version of SSH can expose you to known vulnerabilities that attackers can and will exploit. Keeping systems patched and configurations hardened is key to staying protected. Hardening recommendation number 1. One of the simplest and most effective ways to harden SSH is to disable direct root logins. By default, some systems allow users to log in directly as root, and that's risky. It gives attackers a single target with full privileges. When we set permit root login in the SSH configuration file, we force anyone connected to log in as a regular user first. This adds another layer of protection because attackers now have to guess both the valid username and a password. It also limits potential damage. Even if an attacker does compromise a low-level account, they'd still need to escalate privileges to access root privileges, which is much harder to do. Disabling root login is a standard best practice across most secure environments. Simple change, big impact. My second hardening recommendation would be the next major SSH hardening step is switching from password-based authentication to key-based authentication. Instead of typing a password every time, users generate a pair of cryptographic keys, one public and one private. The public key goes on the server side, the SSH authorized keys file, and the private key stays securely on the user's device. Now, to strengthen security even more, we can disable password authentication altogether by setting password authentication to no in the SSH configuration. This makes brute force attacks nearly impossible because SSH keys, especially RSA 4096-bit or ED 25519 keys, are much more complex than any typical password. And even with advanced cracking tools, it would take attackers years to break that. In short, using key-based authentication replaces a weak, guessable credential system with one that's cryptographically secure and far more reliable. Now, hardening recommendation number 3. The last hardening step focuses on controlling access and enforcing modern security standards. First, it's important to make sure the system uses SSH Protocol 2 only. Protocol 1 is outdated and has known vulnerabilities, so adding Protocol 2 in the SSH configuration ensures that all communication uses stronger encryption and integrity protection. Next, we can limit which users are allowed to connect via SSH. And by adding a line like allow users admin student in the SSH config file, only those specific accounts are permitted to log in remotely. This approach will greatly reduce the attack surface, since even if someone has credentials for another account, they won't be able to connect through SSH at all. Together, enforcing Protocol 2 and restricting allowed users keeps SSH access tight and reduces exposure and strengthening the overall security posture of the whole system. In conclusion, SSH is truly the backbone of secure remote administration, especially on Linux systems. This allows administrators to manage servers safely from anywhere, but like any powerful tool, it needs to be configured correctly. OpenSSH is the most common implementation because it's dependable on open source, but its default configurations aren't always secure. That's where hardening steps will come in handy, like disabling root login, using key-based authentication instead of passwords, and enforcing protocol version 2 and limiting which users can connect. These practices won't just make SSH safer, they strengthen confidentiality, integrity, and control the remote access without making management more complicated. In the end, a properly hardened SSH service gives you a secure and resilient foundation for server management and one that balances strong security with smooth functionality. And here are my references, and I hope you enjoyed, and have a good night.